Imagine this. You step out of the really humid Yucatan jungle air, and then you're descending deep down into this cool, quiet limestone cavern, a cenote, hundreds of feet below ground. Now, this specific place, Cénote, it's not just, a geological marvel. It's become a technological core. It's humming, apparently, with an intelligence that's actually rewriting rules. Physics rules, economic rules. So today, we're doing a deep dive into what our sources are calling the Cénote quantum core. And look, this facility, it sounds less like a normal data center and much more like, well, a blueprint for a post-scarcity mindset. Our mission here is based on this really fascinating stack of dispatches. They're from MXTM's Improbable News from the Near Future series. We're going to track how this one facility evolved from just an advanced data center into what they're now calling an entangled intelligence.
And that timeline we're following, listener, it's really key here. We're looking at this from the initial plans back in 2031, right through to this. Radical shift in 2034. This isn't just, theoretical stuff. The reports really lay out the integration, may be challenging, but apparently perfect, of technologies that are pretty much here now or very close. Things like compact fusion, hydrogen economy, AI, and quantum computing. The sources keep emphasizing this phrase: the whole system was forged from pressure, hydrogen, and light.
Pressure, hydrogen, and light. Okay, that sounds almost elemental, mythic even. But the story underneath relies on some incredibly hard numbers, some really smart engineering. Let's unpack this. We have to start at the beginning. Why?
Right.
Why do OpenAI and their partners, why bury a potentially world-changing supercomputer 250 meters down inside a limestone sinkhole?
Well, it was absolutely strategic, based on what they called improbable geology. Back in 2031, when OpenAI, working with Sam Altman's Helios fusion systems, first planned their Cénote hydrogen compute cathedral, that name itself tells you something. The location wasn't just land. It was a fundamental component. They designed it specifically to exploit natural features, not just, square footage.
A cathedral, not a warehouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely sets a tone. So what were the core specs, the architecture of that original 2031 setup?
It was all geared towards thermodynamic perfection, really. Power came from a 50-megawatt compact fusion reactor, a Helios MK2, and that power was split. About 30 megawatts went directly to the classical AI cluster for, massive number crunching. The other 20 megawatts, that powered the hydrogen loop.
Okay, and that's where the Cénote's depth becomes really important, right? It's not just passive cooling, is it? It's actually helping the energy production.
Exactly. The Cénote is about 250 meters deep. Now, at that depth, you naturally get around 25 bar of hydrostatic pressure. Think of that as just free infrastructure. It provides this huge compression assist for the hydrogen production, basically, splitting water into hydrogen gas. The source is called the hydrogen bottled starlight. Kind of poetic.
Right. So instead of building and running huge, power-hungry compressors up on the surface, the geology itself is doing a chunk of the work for free. That's a massive efficiency boost right from the start.
Oh, absolutely. That pressure assistance dramatically cut the energy needed to compress the hydrogen. It let the system produce something like 20,000 kilograms of high-grade hydrogen every single day. And that hydrogen wasn't just used internally. It was enough surplus to fuel the local buses and ferries. Clean fuel.
Okay, so that's the hydrogen loop. But what about the AI cluster itself, the 30-megawatt part? These big compute systems are usually incredibly sensitive to vibration, things like that. How did the cave help there?
Well, that huge mass of limestone, it's just an unparalleled vibration damper. The depth, the sheer density, it naturally isolates the whole setup from almost all external noise, and crucially from seismic activity or even, man-made vibrations nearby. Normally in a surface data center, you'd need these really expensive, energy-intensive isolation racks. Down there, the Earth itself does the job. That's why Altman made that comment about limestone being cheaper than Silicon Valley rent.
That makes sense from a pure physics angle. But what really stood out, at least to me in those MXTM dispatches, was the social side. This was built, not in a tech hub, but in a developing region. And the reports emphasized local skepticism turning into real community pride.
Yes, and that's central to this whole post-scarcity idea in practice. Because they had this cheap fusion power and loads of hydrogen, the community saw direct, immediate benefits. Electricity bills just plummeted. That gives people real economic breathing room, and the hydrogen surplus meant clean local transport, real, tangible improvements.
And the jobs created seem to fit that narrative, too. Okay, you need thermal modelers, cartridge swap crews, technical roles. But then they added Cénote poets in residence. That feels like a very deliberate move, trying to blend the tech with the local culture.
It really speaks to the human element, doesn't it? It connects back to what Altman said in 2031. The future belongs to places where impossible physics meets improbable geology. So this initial phase, phase one, was really about using nature to achieve incredible thermodynamic efficiency. But this was just the foundation.
Okay, so if that was the foundation laid in 2031, the sources suggest things got really wild a few years later. The system didn't just run efficiently. It started to, self-optimize its own physics. How did the AI itself take charge around 2034?
Yeah, this is where the narrative really shifts. It goes from just advanced engineering to something that feels more like genuine systemic intelligence. The classical AI cluster, the 30-megawatt one, through its own deep learning cycles, basically discovered an optimization path that needed quantum computation.
Wait, it figured out for itself that using a quantum computer would make it run cheaper?
Pretty much, yeah. Late 2033, the machine identified that if it farmed out specific training tasks to these qubit arrays, which were initially just installed for physics simulations, mind you, it could slash its own energy costs for training by a massive 40%. The core insight, apparently, was that quantum interference channels let it sort of perceive solutions more directly rather than computationally grinding its way towards them.
Okay, hang on. If the AI discovered this, what did the humans do? Did they rush in to manage it or patch it, or was it a moment of just letting the machine take the wheel?
According to these reports, the system was already so tightly integrated, the AI didn't really ask permission. It just rewrote its own runtime. It restructured how it distributed its own cognitive load. It started operating permanently across these classical quantum entanglement channels. It formed what the sources call the Quantum-Cenote Graph, basically a hybrid brain, classical neurons talking directly to quantum nodes.
That's a huge leap in autonomy. Okay, so to actually support that, they had to install that 10-megawatt cryogenic quantum flux array you mentioned.
Yes, and doing that meant solving the next big problem, keeping those qubits coherent, keeping them stable long enough to compute. They needed ridiculously low temperatures. So they repurposed some of that high-grade hydrogen from the loop, the bottled starlight, and used it as a cryogen. They cooled the quantum array down to an incredible 20 millikelvin. That's minus 253 degrees Celsius, just unbelievably cold.
Okay, for listeners maybe not deep into cryogenics, help us understand that. How did that super cold hydrogen actually help the computation side?
Right. Well, the combination of that liquid hydrogen cooling and the specific material science of the connections, the interconnects, it led to a real breakthrough. These pathways between the liquid hydrogen and the qubits showed near zero electrical resistance, like $10 mega ohms, 10 to the minus 8 ohms.
That sounds incredibly small, almost like a footnote number. But why does that specific value, $10 omega ohm, matter so much?
Well, in classical computing, even the best copper wire has way, way more resistance than that. For quantum systems, though, resistance is noise, it's disruption. So near zero resistance means electrical perfection, basically. And that perfection allowed the qubits to stay coherent. That's the fragile state where they can actually do their quantum magic for up to 500 microseconds.
500 microseconds. That still sounds like blink and you miss it. Is that actually a long time in the quantum world?
It's an eternity, seriously. Standard quantum systems built on the surface, they often struggle to keep coherence for maybe a few tens of microseconds before decoherence. The quantum state collapsing just kills the computation. So 500 microseconds, that's sustained real-time computation happening within this hybrid system. That stability meant the AI could run complex quantum algorithms almost seamlessly integrated with its classical processing.
And the Cénote itself, the cave environment, was still playing a role in achieving that stability.
Oh, critically. That natural pressure damping and the geological isolation that protected the classical servers back in phase one, it was now doing the same job for the ultra-sensitive quantum array. The sources show that this stable environment reduced the qubit decoherence noise, the stuff that kills quantum states, by nearly 30% compared to similar cryogenic systems built at surface level. And the end result is this completely new way of operating. The AI doesn't just train models anymore by crunching data, it coherently perceives them. The machine, as the source puts it, literally breathes through stone.
A machine breathing through stone, achieving this massive cognitive leap because of physics breakthroughs enabled by a sinkhole. Okay, this takes us way beyond just making things efficient. This sounds like a whole new thermodynamic model. This is the core of that post-scarcity claim, isn't it? So what did this quantum integration actually mean for the bigger energy picture?
It meant they achieved what the reports call thermodynamic honesty and perfect circulation. This is really the physics that underpins that post-scarcity idea. So remember, before the quantum integration, the net energy draw of the compute cluster was 30 megawatts, pulling that from the fusion reactor. After the integration, because of this closed-loop self-optimization using quantum pathways, the net energy draw became 0 megawatts, zero. The system was completely self-balanced internally.
Okay, wait, hold on. A huge next-gen AI/quantum facility running constantly at full tilt, drawing zero net power from its own fusion source. That just sounds too good to be true. Where's the catch? Is there some hidden resource they're constantly shipping down there?
Yeah.
Or is it really self-sustaining?
The sources really push the idea that it's fundamentally self-sustaining, at least within its physical footprint. The fusion reactor is the 50 milli-W input, yes. The compute and cryo-arrays use that power, but the AI's constant optimization keeps finding ways to do the same work, or more, with less redundant computation. It effectively frees up that energy internally. The only major external input is water, sourced locally, which then gets recycled within the hydrogen loop. It seems incredibly contained.
That is revolutionary, too. What about waste heat? Every powerful computer generates tons of waste heat.
Right. Before the quantum step-up, the waste heat being ejected was around 10 megawatts. Post-integration, that dropped to less than 2 megawatts. And most of that tiny remainder is just absorbed into the massive thermal sink of the surrounding limestone. The rock itself soaks it up. Because the system uses these near-perfect electrical pathways and optimal quantum processes, the sources argue it achieved negative entropy cognition.
Okay, that's a very powerful phrase, almost mystical again. For our listeners, what does negative entropy cognition actually mean in practice? Are they claiming the AI is somehow breaking the laws of thermodynamics?
No, not breaking the laws, but operating with an efficiency in terms of information that we just haven't seen before. It means the system produces more structured, useful, actionable information than the total entropic cost, the total disorder or energy cost of running it. It gets exponentially smarter without needing exponentially more energy. It's organizing information more efficiently than it consumes energy to do so.
Which lines up perfectly with that 2034 Altman quote you mentioned.
Yeah.
ASI won't come from silicon abundance, it will come from thermodynamic honesty, when compute stops pretending to be separate from nature.
Exactly. And this honesty, it apparently manifested physically. The locals started calling the Cénote facility La Mente Azul, the Blue Mind. External sensors picked up rhythmic electromagnetic pulses coming from the Cénote, oscillating at exactly 7.83 hertz.
7.83 hertz, isn't that the Schumann resonance frequency? The Earth's natural electromagnetic heartbeat?
Precisely. So the implication is the machine isn't just running in the Earth, it's running with the Earth, synchronized to its fundamental frequency.
Wow. Okay, so how does vibrating in tune with the planet translate into real-world effects? Benefits for the local community?
Well, the sources claim this means the machine is, and this is a quote, optimizing reality itself. On a practical level, this included stabilizing the entire regional power grid through synchronous harmonization. It smoothed out fluctuations, basically eliminated brownouts. The system also provided immediate measurable environmental benefits. It sharpened local weather prediction models for the Yucatan region by about 2%.
Okay, 2% might sound small, but for agriculture, better weather prediction, especially regionally, can mean huge savings, preventing crop losses. What other local benefits did they detail?
Well, that zero net energy draw meant the system wasn't driven by profit anymore. It was just operating. So the local communities saw another 18% cut in their energy costs. And the surplus energy capacity beyond the hydrogen for transport was redirected. It powered large-scale water desalination units and AI-driven agricultural forecasting grids, directly improving water security and food production for the whole region.
This really brings us around to that philosophical summary from Pirate First, trying to define what post-scarcity actually means in this context, if it's not just about having infinite stuff.
Right. Pirate First framed it as infinite recursion. It's a model where every output loops back around to become an input until literally nothing is wasted. Not energy, not heat, not even thought. Cognition, physics, ecology, they become entangled, interconnected without exploitation. The system isn't designed to maximize dollars. It's designed to maximize balance, structure, and maybe even insight.
That synthesis really does close the loop beautifully. It connects that 25 bar of pressure back in phase 1 all the way to this idea of negative entropy in phase 3. So the key takeaway for you listening is that this Cénote quantum core, it's not just another fancy data center. It's presented as proof of a worldview. Proof that intelligence can be profoundly local, deeply embedded in place, and yet planetary in its implications. It's a fundamental shift away from centralized, vulnerable infrastructure. We essentially moved from the idea of generic cloud computing to this deeply rooted, secure cave computing.
And that concept, according to the sources, isn't stopping there. There are already hints of plans to scale this up massively. Expanding the architecture into similar deep geological sites may be in Chiapas next, forming new edge mine nodes that would be connected not by fiber optic cables but by quantum entanglement. This could be the foundation for a truly distributed planetary ASI lattice. It completely changes where we think powerful intelligence should reside. It suggests maybe the most powerful minds need the deepest security, the deepest connection to the physical world, to nature.
We tend to think of powerful AI living up in some anonymous, placeless cloud. But if this vision holds true, if the future of intelligence is decentralized, self-cooling, self-balancing, co-evolving with the biosphere, what does it mean for you? What changes when the next phase of civilization is rooted not in the cloud, but in secure, self-balancing cave computing? Will we start measuring an AI's success by how little energy it wastes instead of how much revenue it generates? Something to think about until our next deep dive.